Luke 21, the rest of Luke 21. This is the same material as found in Mark 13 and in Matthew 24 and 25. It is what we call the Olivet Discourse, the teaching on the Mount of Olives about the end of the age. And as I said when I covered those previous chapters in Mark 13 and Matthew 24 and 25, most of what he is talking about, and especially in answer to the disciples' actual question, relates to the fall of Jerusalem, which occurred in history in the year 70 AD, about 40 years after he spoke. The vast majority of this chapter, in fact, I think just about all of this chapter, except for maybe the very end, is about that. Today we want to kind of take... Now, Matthew does start moving forward down in time to the end of time, because Matthew includes a whole other section of teaching after the stuff about the signs of the end of the Jewish age. And so Matthew does start looking ahead down the road to the end of time by the time Jesus gets done speaking at the end of Matthew 25. But here in Luke 21, as well as in Mark 13 and in the first part of Matthew's account of this sermon in Matthew 24, the context is pretty squarely on the fall of the temple. That is the context that starts the conversation. It's what the conversation is about. It's what Jesus' prediction is about. It starts the whole thing. It's what the disciples' question about that prediction is about. And it's what his response to their question is about. And there's very little looking ahead to anything after that. A little bit near the very end, but not a lot. One of the big problems that we have in Bible interpretation today is we take this prophecy, this passage, to be something future, still to today, something that still hasn't happened even now, and that is not the case. Almost everything he says here is something that actually did occur in time, some of which is covered in the rest of the New Testament itself. And is a fact of history and way back in our rearview mirror to us today. A little bit of it at the very end may not be, but most of it is already done and over with. This is still a prediction, okay? Jesus is talking about something that's going to happen in about 40 years, while some of the people alive in his day would still be alive. And when Luke is writing this passage, these events still have not occurred. This is still in the future at the time Luke is writing this down. So this warning is still salient at Luke's time, because the things that Jesus is talking about haven't all been fulfilled yet. The signs may be appearing by the time Luke is putting this down in the writing, but the events themselves have not yet happened. You're going to fall over if you keep doing this wrong. Which is why this is still included here. Now, by the time John is written, I believe Jerusalem has already fallen. There's no need for this discussion because it's already happened. You don't need to keep worrying about it and just looking to the future for it because it's already in the past. But when Matthew, Mark, and Luke were all written, these events had not yet happened. So the warnings were still in the future and still needed to be taken seriously by those who heard them. Some of his disciples were remarking about how the temple was adorned with beautiful stones and with gifts dedicated to God. But Jesus said, "As for what you see here, the time will come when not one stone will be left on another. Every one of them will be thrown down." So again, this is a temple discussion. They are specifically talking about the temple, bringing Jesus' attention to the temple, and Jesus is saying this temple is going to be gone. And this had happened to them once before in their history, and this was the most dramatic event that ever occurred to them as a nation up to this point in time. So to them, this is the end of the age. Like so, when they now they don't. It doesn't put it this way here in Luke, but when Matthew says they ask about the end of the age, to them the smashing of the temple is the end of the age, and in that regard, it is the end of the Jewish age. And Daniel talked about that too at the end of Daniel. We mentioned that before when we overlapped this teaching. We're not going to do all that today. We just don't need to. Already done that. If you want to go back and watch it again, it's in the Matthew video. It's in the video about Matthew's recording of this material in Matthew 24 and 25. We're not going to do that all again today. We don't need to. But This is a temple-related discussion. It's about that physical building that existed at that time and that Jesus predicted would not continue to exist much longer. And that's what they're going to be asking about. So, teacher, they asked, when will these things happen, these stones being thrown down? And what will be the sign that they are about to take place? And Matthew calls this the end of the age. But not the end of the world, just the end of that age and the end of, you could say it's the end of their world, because the fall of the temple would be the end of their world as they understood it at that time. But it's not the end of the universe. It's not the absolute end point of history. And so he replied, watch out that you are not deceived. For many will come in my name, claiming, I am he, and the time is near. Do not follow them. When you hear, these are actual Messiah figures that did appear in Judea and in that area in the century after Jesus. So, like, this did happen, okay? This is a fact of history. This is not about something that occurs still down the road from here, 2024 on down. No, this occurred in the years after Jesus spoke. And these people, by the time this is put into writing, this has already happened. In fact, we're going to hear about a couple of them in Acts. One of the reasons why Paul's going to get arrested in the end of Acts is because they're going to try to claim that he's one of them. And the Roman commander that arrests him initially is going to be confused and think that he's one of these guys. So there are examples of this actually happening that occurred from that point in time onward for about 100 years. And they say that's not true. None of that's true. Don't be alarmed by any of that. When you hear of wars and revolutions, and you will hear these, because these things will happen, do not be frightened. These things must happen first, but the end will not come right away. By the time Luke is writing this down, this stuff would have been going on for a while. Okay. Then he said to them, nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There will be great earthquakes, famines, and pestilences in various places, and fearful events and great signals, signs from heaven. These are not the actual sign that he's going to tell them about, though. But these things are going to happen along the way. And they did. Again, you can go back and read about this. These are facts of history that occurred in the years after Jesus spoke. But before all this, they will lay hands on you and persecute you. They will deliver you to synagogues and prisons, and you will be brought before kings and governors, all on account of my name. Now, this actually happened. The rest of the New Testament is going to record that. This is not about something that's going to happen in the future. It may happen in the future, okay? It may happen again. It may. But he's not talking about something that's going to happen in the days of the Antichrist in the 21st century or whatever. He's not talking about that. He's talking about the things that we were actually going to read about in the rest of the New Testament. You don't have to do more than flip down a few pages to read about this happening. This will result in your being witnesses to them. But make up your mind not to worry beforehand about how you will defend yourselves. For I will give you words and wisdom that none of your adversaries will be able to resist or contradict. You will be betrayed, even by parents, brothers, relatives, and friends, and they will put some of you to death. All men will hate you because of me, but not a hair of your head will perish. By standing firm, like Paul is doing right now, as Luke is not so subtly reminding his reader, you will gain life. When you see Jerusalem, so here's the sign, here's the actual sign. When you see Jerusalem being surrounded by armies, you will know that its desolation is near. Now, Matthew and Mark, they both refer to the abomination of desolation, which is a concept that comes from Daniel, which we talked about when we read those Gospels. Luke is not going to go into that much detail about ancient Jewish theology because his reader is not interested in that, doesn't even know about that, so he's going to be plain. It's going to be unholy people coming into the Holy Land. The abomination that brings desolation will be an unholy army invading the Holy Land, surrounding the holy city. You will know that its destruction is near. As I said before, the Roman army actually came upon Jerusalem early and could have wiped them out very early in this war, but then they left. In the fall of 66 AD, they actually did surround the city, and then for whatever reason they withdrew and came back a couple of years later. or I think maybe later the following year. And so that was the signal to get out. And again, this is not figurative. This is not metaphor. This is very plain. Okay, they're going to come and surround the city. When that happens, leave. Okay, get out. Now you wouldn't think that you'd be able to get out if they're surrounding the city, which you would be able to, but they left. Okay, they surrounded the city. You couldn't leave if they're surrounding the city, but they did leave. Okay, and so like when they're gone, you take the opportunity to get out of there. When you see them surround the city, you know that's a sign. So as soon as you can, get out of there. Let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. Let those who are in the city get out, and let those in the country not enter the city. Bad place to be when this happens. For this is a time of punishment and fulfillment of all that has been written. How dreadful it will be in those days for pregnant women and nursing mothers. There will be great distress in the land and wrath against this people. They will fall by the sword and will be taken as prisoners to all the nations. Jerusalem will be trampled on by the Gentiles until the time of the Gentiles are fulfilled. So it's going to be trampled on until it's trampled on no more. Rome, in fact, is going to eventually make Jerusalem a Roman city. There will be signs in the sun. Now here is where we start to get confused. Because we hear this kind of talk, and we think it has to refer to the second coming of Jesus. And we just kind of forget the entire concept of what the day of the Lord actually teaches. There will be signs in the sun, moon, and stars. On the earth, nations will be in anguish and perplexity at the roaring and tossing of the sea. Men will faint from terror. Apprehensive of what is coming on the world, for the heavenly bodies will be shaken. At that time they will see the Son of Man coming in a cloud with power and great glory. When these things begin to happen, stand up and lift up your heads, because your redemption is drawing near. Okay, so we have to talk about this. This is what people will refer to when they think of, well, this has to be talking about the second coming. No, it doesn't have to be talking about that. This is very common prophetic language, both in their prophetic books and also in other ancient prophecies and views looking at the world. Signs in the sun, the moon, and the stars were always taken very seriously by the ancient people. And eclipses and things of that nature were seen as portents of disaster. The Son of Man coming in the clouds is a reference to Daniel 7. The whole idea of the Son of Man comes from here. The Son of Man essentially just means human. Ezekiel was called that by God a lot in the book of Ezekiel. But there is a specific kind of Son of Man, a specific kind of human here in Daniel 7. In my vision at night I looked. This is Daniel 7:13. And there before me was one like a Son of Man, coming with the clouds of heaven. He approached the Ancient of Days, God, we've already met him previously in this passage, and was led into his presence. He was given authority, sovereign glory, and sovereign power. All peoples, nations, and men of every language worshipped him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion that will not pass away, and his kingdom is one that will never be destroyed. So Jesus, that's what it means for the Son of Man to come with the clouds. He's coming, he's being given power and authority over all the earth, being led in the presence of the Ancient Days. And when that happens, you're going to be redeemed. You're going to be justified. And the context he's talking about here means the people who have been bothering you, which up to that point in time had been the synagogues, the Jewish authorities, the Sanhedrin, those kind of, they're going to be judged. The Son of Man is coming to judge them, which did happen in the Roman-Judea war. And in the process, you're going to be redeemed. You're going to be vindicated. You're going to be proven right. What you said, what you spent 40 years saying will be proven right because it happened. These people who have criticized you, who have complained about you, who have condemned you, who have put you out of the synagogues, who have shunned you from your social circles, who have seized your property and assets, who have persecuted you, put you, some of you in prison, beaten you, flogged you, executed some of you. They did all this because they hated me so much, and you're my followers. But you're going to be redeemed, you're going to be vindicated, proven right, and they're going to be judged and condemned when the Son of Man comes in judgment on them. That's what that is saying. Now we hear that and we think all kinds of things about the end of the world, but that's actually not what he's referring to. He then told them this parable. Look, whoa. That wasn't the parable. Talk about that, will you? That wasn't the parable he told them. Look at the fig tree and all the trees. When they sprout leaves, you can see for yourselves and know that summer is near. Even so, when you see these things happening, you know that the kingdom of God is near. Now, he's been saying from the beginning of his ministry that the kingdom of God is near, or even that it's here amongst you. So it's not just when these things happen down the road somewhere the kingdom of God is near. But like, you know these things are happening, and the kingdom is coming. The Son of Man is coming in judgment. There was a time, I forget when it was, 2021 maybe, I'm not sure. A few years ago, not too long ago, it may have been 2021, or maybe 2020, the COVID year. It may have been the COVID year, actually. I forget. It was around then, a few years ago. We had a really, really late spring. It was just miserable and cloudy and rainy and cold all the way up to like the end of, I think it was 2020. I think it was the COVID year, which is one of the reasons why it made it easy to stay in that spring, because it was just miserable outside. April and May, it was cold and rainy and chillier than it should be. And it gets to the point eventually where it's like, well, when the trees start budding, when the leaves start growing, you know that summer's near. Like, eventually the weather's going to have to turn, because the ground is just going to insist on it. You know, whatever the air is trying to do, whatever cold fronts or low pressure systems are trying to do to bring cold air on us, eventually the ground and the trees are just going to warm up and make it warm. You know, it's just going to happen. Eventually, when the leaves start to sprout, you know that the better weather is near. It's going to happen, even if winter wants to hold on. But be careful, or your hearts will be weighed down. This is new to Luke. This wasn't in the other accounts of this. Wait, excuse me, I missed a paragraph. I tell you the truth. This generation will certainly not pass away until all these things have happened. So there will be people still who will be alive when these things happen that were alive when Jesus was speaking. Not everybody, not all of them. But that's, 40 years, this happened about 40 years later. And Jesus said in Matthew that he didn't know exactly when it was going to happen. At that point in time, Jesus' knowledge was limited to the point where he didn't know exactly when these things were going to happen. That's another reason why I think we want to push this down to the end of the world. Because it just seems so weird to us for Jesus to be claiming that he doesn't know when these things are going to happen. And we do know, because they happened in history. We know what days they happened. But he doesn't say that here, but he does say that in Matthew. So that is, I think, another reason why we kind of want to push this down to the end of time. But it happened about 40 years later. So some people who were alive when Jesus was speaking were still going to be alive. It doesn't mean like all of the span of one generation per se, but it means that some people who were alive when Jesus was speaking would still be alive when these things actually happened. Like, that generation will not be gone by that point. That's the time frame here. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will never pass away. So what I say happens is going to happen. And it's more certain even than heaven and earth existing tomorrow. Heaven and earth are still here today. So they're pretty durable. Jesus' word is even more durable than that. Be careful. Be careful. Or your hearts will be weighed. This is the part that's new to Luke in his account of this sermon. Be careful, or your hearts will be weighed down with dissipation, drunkenness, and the anxieties of life. And that day, the day of the Lord, which is what we've been talking about, will close in on you unexpectedly like a trap. For it will come upon all those who live on the face of the whole earth. Be always on the watch, and pray that you may be able to escape all that is about to happen, and that you may be able to stand before the Son of Man. Now that is the part where he might be talking in a more general sense about his coming in judgment on anything, beyond just the context of him coming in judgment on this one nation at this particular point in time. This seems to be a general warning about being prepared for his coming in general. Because the Son of Man is going to come. The day of the Lord is going to arrive. Whether it happens to you on August 9th, AD 70, or whatever day it was, I think that was the day, or if it happens at some other point in time, the day will come when you will stand before the Son of Man. So be ready for that. You don't have to be afraid of it. For those who are ready for it, it's a day of salvation and deliverance, a day of redemption, as you mentioned here earlier. You can stand up and lift up your head. If you can see it coming, if you see the signs coming. By the way, also, you may not be able to know the exact day or hour, but you can see the signs coming. You can tell the seasons. He's criticized the people of his generation for not being able to see the signs and tell the season. You may not be able to know the day or hour, but you can get a sense of what season you're in by paying attention to the signs, and you're supposed to do that. So when you see these signs coming, it's like you're supposed to be on the watch for it. They asked him for the signs, and he gave them the signs. You're supposed to be on the watch for it. You're supposed to be on the lookout. You're supposed to be ready. And if you are, then the actual day or hour isn't going to be a problem for you. You may not know the day or hour, but that's okay, because you're ready, you're prepared, and when the day and hour comes, you're gonna be all right. You're going to be redeemed. You can stand up and lift up your heads. You don't have to be afraid. You don't have to be apprehensive of what is coming on the earth. You don't have to shake in fear at the tossing of the sea. You can stand up and lift up your heads. You can be excited. You can wait for it. You can be glad for it. You can anticipate it. Because for you, it's not going to be a day of judgment and condemnation. It's going to be a day of redemption, salvation, and deliverance, vindication. Each day, Jesus was teaching at the temple, and each evening he went out to spend the night on the hill called the Mount of Olives. And all the people came early in the morning to hear him at the temple. Okay, that is it. I'm not going to be able to make it through the rest of it. That's enough. I am going to be leaving, going back to my mom's house today, actually in a few hours. I have to get ready for that now. I'll be gone for a couple of weeks. Now, this won't mean anything to anybody watching these videos in the years to come, but I'm not going to be able to finish these Luke videos for a couple of weeks because I'm not going to have my recording equipment, because I'm not going to be here. So, 3 chapters left, 22, 23, 24. But that'll have to wait until after I get back.